Unearth the mysteries of Los Angeles' past. Step into a time machine with us as we unveil the 100 oldest photographs ever known of the City of Angels. Don't just watch history, experience it through the lens of time. 100. Historic cars. Cars look very different these days, and so does that view of Los Angeles. This scenic shot was snapped at Laurel Canyon in Hollywood. About 63 years earlier, California wasn't even considered one of the United States. 99. Universal Studios. Universal Studios Hollywood first opened on March 15, 1915, when Carl Laemmle invited thousands to his 230-acre property. Shown here is the backlot of the now famous production company. 98. Hollywood Sign. The Hollywoodland sign was erected just 2 years before this photo was taken, as a means of encouraging people to live in the suburban housing development with that same name. 97. Pacific Electric. From 1918 to 1928, you'll typically see a Pacific Electric car transporting hundreds of passengers down Hollywood Boulevard. You won't see those cables today, but you can imagine how much easier it was to get around. 96. Old Hollywood. This aerial view of Hollywood in November 1929 proves just how residential it was before more buildings started popping up all over the city. 95. And the Oscars go to? Old Hollywood is a time we'll never forget, and it shows how much Los Angeles has changed over the years. In this photo, you'll see William C. DeMille holding one of the first Oscars at the inaugural Academy Awards. Winners that year included Hans Crowley, Mary Pickford, and Warner Baxter, all pictured here. 94. Walt Disney. Walt Disney started his empire about a decade early, but we love this photo of him working with a penguin at his studios in Burbank. 93. Hollywoodland. It wasn't until 1949 that a lot went down with the sign. Literally. The H fell and wasn't replaced for quite some time, but the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce ultimately decided to bring back the H and remove land. 92. Griffith Observatory. Griffith Jenkins Griffin's dream was realized 16 years after his death in 1919. Today, the Griffith Observatory is one of the most visited and, yes, Instagrammed sites in Los Angeles. 91. Freeways. About 82 years ago, you would regularly see people walking to work on foot. Nowadays, the freeways don't exactly offer such a mode of transportation. Number 90. Rita Hayworth. An old Hollywood icon, entertainer Rita Hayworth cruised down the street near Warner Brothers studio in LA. At the time, she was married to Edward C. Judson, but that was her first of 5 marriages. 89. Cookouts. Your cookouts probably don't look like this one. Back in the 1940s, young people donned their retro swimsuits and cooked at the beachside in Los Angeles. 88. As the United States was in the throes of World War II, there was trouble in Los Angeles too. The Zoot Suit riots took place in June 1943 and involved U.S. servicemen and young Mexican Americans. 87. Warner Brothers strike. In October 1945, film workers conducted a strike against Warner Brothers Studio, picketing and fighting with the Burbank police. This was just one of many labor strikes in the entertainment industry. 86. The famous palm trees. On a seemingly more peaceful day in 1945, you can see a palm tree along the side of Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. 85. Hollywood Hills. This aerial view of Cahuenga Parkway in the Hollywood Hills is hardly visible, thanks to Los Angeles' serious smog problem. There's more where that came from in the following slides. 84. Hollywood at night. Is there anything more glamorous than Hollywood at night? In 1951, you could look toward Hollywood Boulevard and see the Pantages Theater and the Broadway Hollywood Building, among other locales. 83. The Date. We can't think of anything more romantic than checking out the Los Angeles skyline in a retro car back in 1951. 82. CinemaScope. The era of CinemaScope widescreen films began with the premiere of 1953's The Robe. Held at the Grauman's Chinese Theater, now known as the TCL Chinese Theater, it was a momentous occasion for the industry. 81. Richard Todd. Richard Todd is looking out beyond Hollywood Hills, and we can't blame him. That same year, he starred in the film The Dam Busters. 80. Capitol Records. Who wears short shorts? Joan Bradshaw. Posing in front of Capitol Records with a cute pup, she starred in a few films, but is most well known for her producing career. 79. Dome House. Architect Bernard Judge had a pretty incredible view while building this geodesic dome house. The feat was ultimately completed 2 years after this was taken. 78. Flying Saucer. Back in 1963, the Amalgamated Flying Saucer Club of America was proud to release this image taken by one of their members. Is it proof that there were extraterrestrials on Earth? We may never know. 77. UCLA team. Basketball fans know how amazing it was to witness John Wooden's UCLA basketball team finish its 30-0 season with a huge NCAA championship win over Duke. 76. The Beatles. Another hot ticket in 1964 was to see the Beatles perform live at the Hollywood Bowl. Weren't alive to see it? You can purchase their album with recordings from the show on Amazon. 75. Jimmy Carter. Presidential hopeful Jimmy Carter saw an opportunity to secure California voters when he supported Proposition 14. Here, you can see their warm welcome when he visited Los Angeles. 74. Games of the 23rd Olympiad. Los Angeles was home to the games of the 23rd Olympiad, and several competitions were held at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. The games will return to LA in 2028. 73. The LA Marathon. The first LA Marathon took place on March 9, 1986. By the end, 7,581 runners crossed the finish line, making it the largest first-time marathon held in the U.S. 72. More riots. Many look back on the 1990s in Los Angeles as a difficult, tension-filled time. In 1992, the LA riots, also known as the Rodney King riots, caused havoc in the city. After 4 police officers were acquitted following the brutal beating of a black man named Rodney King, a 5-day riot ensued. 71. Northridge earthquake. There were natural disasters too. The Northridge earthquake killed more than 60 people, injured more than 9,000, and caused damage all over the San Fernando Valley. 70. Diaper services. It was during World War II when mothers started working out of the house, therefore bringing the need for diaper service. The diaper service would deliver cloth diapers when needed. They would boil the diapers to get rid of bacteria. 69. JFK. Kennedy delivered his acceptance speech from the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. In November, the Kennedy-Johnson ticket won 49.7% of the popular vote against Richard Nixon's 49.6%. 68. Theme building. Originally, there were rumors that the structure housed a revolving restaurant, but LAX officials confirmed the restaurant never revolved. The original design for the airport was created by Pereira and Luckman in 1959. In 1961, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson dedicated the structure. 67. Football. On November 20th, 1954, UCLA's undefeated football team battled it out at a sold-out Coliseum. There were 548,000 fans present. Entering the fourth quarter, the Bruins held only a 7-0 lead. However, in the final 15 minutes, the Bruins had 4 touchdowns and beat the Trojans 34-0. 66. Fox Movietone Studios. This studio was originally opened in 1928 and was known as the newest, largest, and the most equipped studio to produce motion pictures in the world. In 1935, Fox Film merged with 20th Century Pictures. The movie Shirley Temple was shot at this studio. 65. Intersecting freeways. The freeway construction boom began in the 1950s, and interstate highways began to appear. This picture shows a helicopter surveying for jamming and crowding on the freeways. At that time, new freeways represented hope for the future. The freeways provided an alternative means of travel to the aging electric railways and traffic-choked boulevards. 64. Street scene. Warner Brothers Pictures Incorporated was started by 4 brothers, Albert, Sam, Jack, and Harry, in 1923. The motion picture can be a great power for peace and goodwill. Harry Warner. The Warner Brothers made the first full-length all-talking film Lights of New York and the first all-talking color movie On with the Show. 63. Pike Amusement Park. Charles Drake purchased much of the land near the beach and started with a roller rink, shooting gallery, fortune teller, and snacks. In 1908, a ballroom, movie theater, and auditorium were added. The oceanside stretch was named the Walk of a Thousand Lights. 62. The 28th Annual Academy Awards. The 28th Academy Awards were held at the RKO Pantages Theater on March 21, 1956. The awards were hosted by Jerry Lewis, Claudette Colbert, and Joseph L. Mankiewicz. Walt Disney won Best Documentary Short Subject, Best Motion Picture was given to Marty Harold Hecht, and Best Director was given to Delbert Mann Marty. 61. Lakewood Building Project. The building of Lakewood broke records with empty fields, becoming 17,500 homes in less than 3 years. The first foundations were poured on February 24th, and a new house was completed every 7.5 minutes, with an average of 40 to 60 houses being built in one day. 60. $1.5 million Christmas tree. In 1955, upscale department store I. Mangan, located in Los Angeles, California, had a Christmas tree bejeweled with $1.5 million worth of gems. They had multiple guards keeping a careful watch over the tree. 59. Case Study House Number 22. Julia Schulman's 1960 photograph of Pierre Koenig's Case Study House Number 22 in the Hollywood Hills was self-consciously created to be iconic, epitomizing the architecture, lifestyle, and landscape of Los Angeles in one aspirational image, says LACMA photo curator Britt Salveson. 58. Aqueduct. In 1914, race car driver Bert Dingley traveled a section of the recently completed Los Angeles Aqueduct, which brings water to the growing metropolis from the Owens Valley. Its construction is still fought over today. 57. Chicanos. Young men support a national Chicano moratorium committee protest against the Vietnam War in 1970. 6 months later, police would descend on another committee-led march in East LA, killing 3, including Los Angeles Times journalist Ruben Salazar. 56. Bunker Hill. Old downtown on Bunker Hill gave way to the new in 1967. It's a good reminder that we should keep the places that define the city as we continue to evolve, says Linda Dishman, president of the LA Conservancy. 55. Jackson 5. The Jackson 5 relax at home in Encino with their parents Joe and Catherine in 1970. Michael would later purchase the home for himself, recording songs for Off the Wall and Thriller there. It remains in the family. 54. Marilyn Monroe. In the summer of 1962, George Barris collaborated with Marilyn Monroe on what would be her last photo shoot. According to Barris's daughter, Caroline, to prepare for the session, her father went to one of Monroe's favorite stores, Saks Fifth Avenue, to purchase clothes and one large green towel for her to wear. He also interviewed her at length to get the story straight and clear the air about all the lies that were told about her, says Caroline. Monroe died a few weeks after the shoot. In 1995, Barris published the images and interview in Marilyn, Her Life in Her Own Words. The photographer passed away on September 30th of this year. 53. Hollywood Boulevard. This image of women out for a stroll on Hollywood Boulevard in 1969 encapsulates a timeless scene, says photographer Catherine Opie. The sun streaming in as it sets in the west, the hopes and hopelessness of what Hollywood can bring to some. It is street photography at its best. 52. Cahuenga Avenue. Called a natural gateway by historian E.O. Palmer, the route through the foothills connects the Los Angeles basin to the San Fernando Valley. Begun as a footpath, the road expanded to accommodate horse-drawn vehicles and has widened again and again for automobiles and streetcars until one of the most storied roads of the 20th century, the Hollywood Freeway, US Route 101, was carved through it. With an elevation of 745 feet above sea level, it is the lowest pass through the Santa Monica Mountains. 51. Selig Polyscope Company Studio. The Edendale neighborhood eventually became Echo Park, Los Feliz, and Silver Lake. 50. The most infamous car chase. All eyes were on the 405 freeway as A.J. Cowlings drove O.J. Simpson in what became possibly the most infamous car chase in history. 25 years later, people are still talking about that white Bronco. 49. Paramount Pictures. In the 1930s, times were tough for Paramount Studios. It was on the brink of financial disaster and was facing pretty tough competition. Paramount accepted the challenge and created some of the most definitive movies of the decade. Mae West was one of the stars vital to Paramount's success. 48. The Malibu Fires. In 1958, 2 weeks before Christmas, fires swept through Malibu. 18,000 acres burned between Malibu and Zuma Canyons. The wildfire destroyed 38 homes. Gale force winds pushed the fire through Malibu. The wildfires caused so much destruction. 47. Mount Lee Tower. The Tower Farm on Mount Lee was the location for TV transmitters. Mount Lee is in the Santa Monica Mountains. The famous Hollywood sign is located on its southern slope. In 1951, all 3 TV stations at Mount Lee were moved to better sites at Mount Wilson. 46. Streetcar Graveyard. Streetcars were once the main mode of public transportation. The Great Depression of the 1930s led to the closure of many streetcar lines. By the 1960s, most North American streetcar lines were closed. City buses were used more often, and automobiles. 45. The poor of LA. California's population grew in the 1930s, more than doubling from 3.4 million in 1920. The growth was mainly migrant workers. Extreme poverty caused many families to live without electricity, running water, or shelter. 44. Sunset Boulevard Exit. US 101 is possibly the most historic highway in California. It was commissioned in 1926 as one of the original US highways. It originally went from the Mexican border to Olympia, Washington. This photo showed the Sunset Boulevard exit off the 101 freeway in 1954. 43. Los Angeles Lights. The famous nighttime view of Los Angeles began with the arrival of streetlights in 1868. Throughout the early 1900s, night lamps were placed all over Los Angeles. Soon lit-up store signs and traffic lights were all added. 42. Oil Rich. California was a state heavily fed on oil. Ms. Emma Summers, also known as the Oil Queen of California, had her first oil well dug close to where LA Dodger Stadium is today. By 1926, California was pumping almost 30% of the oil supplies at the national level. 41. American Migrants. The Dust Bowl migration of the 1930s. Families from Oklahoma and neighboring states made their way to California, looking for a place to live and work. They lost their homes and livelihoods in the Dust Bowl. Even though they were Americans, they were still viewed as intruders by many in California. 40. Mount Wilson Observatory. George Hale founded the Mount Wilson Observatory in 1904. George brought the Snow Solar Telescope to Mount Wilson to continue his studies of the sun. It became the world's foremost astronomical research facility. 39. Landslide, 1952. Heavy rainfall caused flooding throughout Los Angeles in 1952. On January 18th, 3.17 inches of rain fell in a 24-hour period. The storm and mudslides were responsible for 8 deaths. The rains caused $7.5 million in damage to hundreds of recently built hillside homes. Number 38. A Star is Born premiere. Jack Warner sent invitations to every movie star in town weeks before the premiere. Elizabeth Taylor, Frank Sinatra, Marilyn Monroe, Doris Day, Humphrey Bogart, and Lauren Bacall were among some of the biggest name stars at the premiere. 37. Sunset and Vine. It is a 1.5-mile stretch between West Hollywood and Beverly Hills. You could find Dino's Lodge, the Tiffany Theater, Playboy Club, Sea Witch, Trip, Macombo, Trocadero, Le Dome, Ben Frank's, Tower Records, Jerry's, Club Valley, and the Whiskey A Go-Go. 36. 20th Century Fox Studio. This studio is an American film studio that is a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Studios, a division of the Walt Disney Company. 20th Century Fox is known for some of the biggest films of all time, including Titanic and Avatar. 35. Will Rogers State Beach. Will Rogers Beach is named after actor Will Rogers. In the 1920s, Will bought the land and developed a ranch along the coast. He owned 186 acres, now known as the Pacific Palisades. Rogers dies in 1935 in a plane crash, and his wife, Betty, died in 1944. After they both died, the ranch became a state park. 34. Miss Control Tower. This control tower was built in the late 1960s and is located at the Brackett Field Airport. This airport originally had only one runway, which was paved and had paved taxiways on each side. Because of increased traffic in the 1980s, a second runway was added. 33. Ron Kovic at Peace March. Ron Kovic volunteered for duty and was deployed to Vietnam in 1965. In 1968, while leading his squad across an open area, Kovic was shot. He suffered a collapsed lung and a spinal cord injury that left him paralyzed from the chest down. Ron began speaking out for peace at anti-war rallies and did interviews. 32. Los Angeles Central Park. Central Park held concerts, political events, and many more activities. One of Central Park's charms was the pepper tree-lined avenue. Central Park was located between 49th and 50th Streets. The park was hailed by the Times, pride of the whole Vernon countryside. 31. Hollywood and Vine. This district became known in the 1920s for its concentration of radio and movie-related businesses. The Hollywood Walk of Fame is centered on the intersection. Capitol Records Tower is one of the few buildings still standing. 30. Robert Kennedy. In 1968, Mr. Kennedy had flown into the city to campaign in the California primary. The polls were closed early because every single registered voter had already cast a ballot. After leaving the podium and after giving his victory speech, Mr. Kennedy was gunned down. 29. Another view of Capitol Records. Capitol Studios has been linked with many of the most famous singers, from Michael Jackson, Nat King Cole, Dean Martin, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra was the first artist at Capitol Studios in 1956. 28. Spahn Ranch. This ranch was also known as the Spahn Movie Ranch. It was 55 acres, which had been purchased from Sharon Atkins. The ranch was used for filming movies, especially westerns. When Spahn was 80 years old, he allowed the Manson family to move in, rent-free, in exchange for labor. The family did chores and ran the horse rental business. The documentary film Manson was filmed at the ranch. 27. Orpheum Theater. The Orpheum Theater opened in 1926. The theater originally housed 2,350 seats. The theater cost $1.5 million and has over 9,000 lamps outside, 17,000 lamps inside. There were 1,000 cove lights around the dome, changing colors. 26. Old Los Angeles. Olvera Street is a historic street in downtown Los Angeles. Olvera Street is home to more than 36 restaurants. The street was recreated as a tourist attraction in 1930, a romanticized version with the theme of a Mexican marketplace. 25. Westlake Park and Wilshire Boulevard. This area was used as a city dump, but within a decade the site became one of LA's most popular outdoor retreats. It is a saddle-shaped depression between two ridges. In 1934, a causeway extending Wilshire Boulevard through the park split the lake in half. In 1942, the name was changed to Douglas MacArthur. 24. Main Street. The first known automobile was on the streets in Los Angeles. Frederick Blechenden creates the first motion picture made in Los Angeles, 25 Seconds of Traffic on South Spring Street. Most of the 19th century buildings no longer exist. 23. Universal Studios. Universal Studios is a television and film studio in California. The lot officially opened on March 15, 1915, on a 230-acre ranch. Later, the size was considered the first self-contained community dedicated to making films. 22. Broadway. Broadway was the city's main commercial street from the 1910s until World War II and is the location of the Broadway Theater and Commercial District. One of the first streets in LA is Broadway. 21. Daredevils playing tennis on a biplane. Gladys Roy and Ivan Unger made tennis famous around the world by playing a tennis match on the wing of a biplane. Roy was a stunt woman, and her courage through not fearing to jump from incredible heights stunned the whole world. 20. Bomb shelter. Hal Hayes designed his house to withstand or flex against the stresses of an atomic blast. The outer walls were made to resist shock waves, and there is an underground concrete and steel fallout shelter and is equipped with bottles of oxygen. 19. Shirley Temple. Shirley Jane Temple was born in 1928 and was an American actress. She was best known for sentimental musicals. Shirley started dancing at the age of 3. She starred in many musicals and films. However, it was arguably Bright Eyes that propelled her to stardom. 18. Councilwoman Wyman. Rosalind Wyman was the youngest person and the second woman ever elected to the Los Angeles City Council. While on the City Council, she was the first female acting mayor. The Los Angeles City Hall was completed in 1928. 17. Whiskey A Go-Go Marquee. Whiskey A Go-Go first opened in the United States in 1958. It was called the first real American discotheque. They often opened with a live band led by Johnny Rivers. DJ Rhonda Lane would spin records between sets from a suspended cage at the right of the stage. 16. Billy Graham Revival Tent. Billy Graham's crusade was supposed to be 3 weeks, but turned into 8 weeks. More than 350,000 people attended, and over 3,000 made decisions to convert. Inside, the tent could seat up to 7,000. 15. Victory Corps. Training in marksmanship helps girls at Roosevelt High School in Los Angeles develop into responsible women. Part of Victory Corps' activities there, rifle practice, encourages girls to be accurate in handling firearms, practicing on the rifle range in the school's basement. 14. Road Survey. 3 engineering students and a professor from USC surveying the area in downtown Los Angeles on 4th Street. 13. P-Line Trolley. The P-Line Trolley at 1st Street as it crosses Alameda. The P-Line Trolley is a streetcar line that operated in Los Angeles from 1895 to 1963. It was part of the Los Angeles Railway Transportation System, which runs on electronic rails and overhead wires. 12. Huge crowds. LA's population exploded in the early 1900s. Over 319,000 people lived there by 1910, making Los Angeles the fastest growing in the United States at that time. The increase was due to several factors, such as expansion of the railroad network, the development of the oil industry, and the growth of the film and entertainment business, the promotion of real estate, the attraction of its mild climate and natural scenery, and the influx of migrants from other states and countries. 11. El Tango. The Mexican quarter of Los Angeles, also called Sonora Town, was the oldest part of the city, where the Spanish and Mexican settlers established the Pueblo of Los Angeles in 1781. It occupied the area between Alameda Street, Macy Street, North Main Street, and the Los Angeles River. It was also the home of Mexican immigrants and Mexican Americans who came in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. 10. Little Tokyo. Street scene in Little Tokyo. Businesses represented here on East 1st Street include the Hotel Mikado, Shofudo Confectionery, Tengen Restaurant, Sato Bookstore, Hotel Empire, Sumida & Son Hardware, Angel Cake Shop, Moonfish Company, Eagle Employment Agency, Kawahara Company, and Dr. C.K. Nagao, dentist. It was founded by Hamanosuke Shigeta, who opened a restaurant on 1st Street in 1885. 9. Railroad. To accommodate its growing population, LA built up its transportation infrastructure in the late 19th century. The Los Angeles and San Pedro Railroad were the city's first. It was a 21-mile line which connected the harbor of San Pedro Bay and the downtown of Los Angeles. 8. Family number 1319. The evacuation of Japanese and Japanese Americans from West Coast areas under United States Army War Emergency Order. Japanese family reviving at the Santa Anita Reception Center, a former racetrack that was converted into a detention center for people of Japanese ancestry during World War II. 7. Los Angeles Plaza. The photo was taken sometime in the 1860s. It is widely perceived to be the earliest known photograph of Los Angeles. It was taken from the top of Fort Moore Hill and shows the city's historic plaza and some of its surrounding buildings and landscape. 6. Mid-Century Modern. Herman Miller Furniture Showroom, 8806 Beverly Boulevard, West Hollywood. the first showroom on the West Coast designed by Charles and Ray Eames for Henry Miller Furniture Companies. 5 propellers. Students at Washington High School in Los Angeles training for specific contributions to the war effort. Instructor Ralph Angar explains propeller characteristics to students in the aeronautics class. 4. Fire at LA Pacific Building. Flames broke out in the basement of the Los Angeles Pacific Building at 314 West 4th Street, adjoining the Broadway department store, at 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon and threatened serious loss. 3. Office Alfresco. A behind-the-scenes look at the glamorous world of furniture modeling by the Aluminum Group. The Aluminum Group furniture is a series of chairs, ottomans, and tables that were designed by Charles Eames for Herman Miller Incorporated, initially for outdoor use, but soon became popular for indoor use as well. 2. Newspaper Boys. 9-year-old Newsy and his 7-year-old brother Red, tough specimen of Los Angeles newsboys. Newsies were a common sight in many American cities in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. They bought newspapers from publishers at low cost and sell them at a higher price. 1. Oil wells. The Los Angeles City oil field, which still emits tar today, was discovered in 1892. It is a large oil field north of downtown Los Angeles, extending from south of Dodger Stadium west to Vermont Avenue. It set off California's first major oil boom by producing about 45 barrels per day, which was considered a large amount at that time. Thanks for watching. It's mind-blowing to witness the city's evolution captured in these historic images. If you enjoyed this trip video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more fascinating glimpses into the past.